Welcome to the officially unofficial podcast of On Call. I'm Clay Cranford, a retired sergeant from the Orange County Sheriff's Department here down in Southern California. And we have my co-host, Omar Martinez, a former lieutenant from the Long Beach Police Department. How are you doing today, Omar?
Good. Great to be here.
All right.
Episode 3.
Episode 3, The South of Heaven.
Yeah.
As it's entitled. So we're gonna work through the episode. We're gonna talk through the scenes, and we're gonna fill in and give you our take as former law enforcement officers who worked a lot of different assignments, and actually many of the assignments that are depicted in the TV show On Call. And let's begin with where we started. In episode 3, kicks off with a thrilling foot chase. Diaz pursues a suspect holding a hatchet through a rooftop parking lot where Harmon drives to intercept. As the subject pushes another man off the edge, Diaz stops to help him, causing his gun to fall. In the process, the chase continues until the suspect attempts to leap onto a nearby flagpole, so a little parkour action. His plan fails, and he plummets to the ground, breaking his leg. Once paramedics arrive, a fellow rookie officer, also a friend of Diaz, who we've seen multiple times through this, so already in episode 1 and 2, returns his gun, advises him to keep the incident from Harmon. The officer hints that Harmon has a reputation for getting fellow officers fired, including Lastman's former partner. Okay, so yeah, they just drop us right in the middle of this foot pursuit, and I gotta say, foot pursuits are the best.
Yeah. I mean, this is right in the middle of it. This is actually down in the shoreline area. Some of the areas look really familiar.
Yeah. So this is on location in Long Beach.
Yeah, this looks like Long Beach. There's a couple of boats that run out to Catalina from that area. So it's and then they get a lot of tourists down there. They've revamped it, and it's really nice down there. They've got some places to eat. So and then some businesses, some business banks, I think, and a few other buildings that have all kinds of businesses in it. But you can see the people walking around they had in there, when they're doing the chase scene. It makes it more exciting.
Yeah. Well, I've been in a handful of foot pursuits, and I got to say they're the best. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than someone running from you and you get to chase them. I mean, I feel like it just taps into a very basic of our reptilian brain, like chasing after that you're a hunter and you're chasing after your quarry. But it's actually a lot of fun, to be honest, especially when you're younger. It's a lot of fun. It's a little harder when you're older.
Yeah, when you got the energy, and when you're going in foot pursuit, you think you got it all figured out too, but when you start jumping over walls, and you get flashbacks to doing the test when you get hired, because you got to jump over a wall. And then if you're trying to, that's the thing, you're trying to chase after somebody and you're worried about them having a weapon and you're jumping over a wall. You feel like you're thinking, hey, where does my gun go? What do I do with my gun while I'm jumping over the wall, kind of a thing. So yeah, it's definitely gets the blood pumping for sure.
Well, this guy has a hatchet, so and Diaz has got his gun in his hand, rightly so. And this guy's running through here, and I mean, we don't know why he's even in a foot pursuit. I mean, I got questions actually.
Yeah,
we don't know why he's in a foot pursuit. Okay, I mean, maybe it's like they got to call man with hatchet, that's likely, right? There's some dude walking around with a hatchet in his hand, and someone calls. Why is Harmon so far away? She's on the freeway or something in traffic, and Diaz is running after this dude. Did you notice? Didn't that seem weird?
Yeah, it seemed like they were automatically they're separated. There is a freeway. It's not really a freeway. It's the beginning of the 710. It's like Shoreline turns into 710, and so she could have been on that, which is right close to the whole Shoreline area. So,
Right.
so she could have been there to drop him off, and then he goes in foot pursuit. But it was a little disjointed.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it makes a lot of drama because she's trying to get there, but episode 1 and 2, if they told us anything, it's don't go on foot pursuit by yourself, and it feels like we're neglecting that rule.
Yeah, where are the lessons in there? Because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking she's driving the car, and he's in foot pursuit by himself. which is, he already got the don't do that, and then we are right again doing it again, and a guy not in there, but he has a hatchet. He's running around with a hatchet in his.
Yeah. Well, and, when you're in foot pursuit, just like in a vehicle pursuit, you have to put out your location as you're going because everybody's trying to get to where you're at. And when you're not on a street, you're in a vehicle, you can say, I'm, traveling eastbound on something, something, right?
Yeah.
You're running through a complex. When I was a training officer, I got into a foot pursuit with my trainee, and it was a residential burglary. It was actually pretty funny. Residential burglary. We're there. We're talking to the victim who was away when the burglary happened, and we're talking to them. And a neighbor shows up, and she's like, "Yeah, I saw this guy like climbing out of the window, or there was something." Like, and she's kind of giving us the description. Yeah, and he was wearing like a striped shirt. She's kind of, and I'm looking off into the distance, and probably I don't know, 40, 50 yards away, a little bit of ways. I see a guy kind of loitering out there, fitting that description. And as she's telling it to me, I'm looking out there, and my trainee's got her head down, and she's writing down what the person's saying.
You're
And
like,
I go, kind of like that guy. And then we all turn and look, and she's like, "Yes, I think that's him." I'm like, "Okay, hang on a sec." So I'm like, let's go. So we're walking towards this guy, and he kind of looks at us, kind of wide eyed, and starts turning around, and starts walking away. And we start speeding up a little bit to try to, catch up to him, close the distance. And there's a point where like he realizes being nonchalant isn't going to work for him anymore. And he just starts sprinting. So I'm like, all right, let's go. So we're chasing after this guy, and you get on your radio and you put out like, "Hey, we're in foot pursuit." And immediately dispatch is going to say, "Where are you?" Like director of travel or something. And I'm looking around, and we're in the middle of like some apartment complex. And all I could say is like, we are running east from the location. Like, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
so we end up, thankfully tackling this guy. And then I was like, I held him down. I told my trainer, like, go over to that street and figure out where and put it out. Cause like, everybody's rolling code 3.
Oh,
But yeah, so he's running through here and this guy's holding a hatchet. So were you thinking about like what his, what his options are here? Like at what point would it be okay for him to shoot this guy?
yeah. I mean, the crowd, like I mentioned before, that's down in the shoreline area. There's businesses around. People are walking through the parking lot and on the sidewalks. And this guy's running through with a hatchet. I mean, what is it going to take for him to just run into somebody and attack him?
Whack him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and whack him with it. And how much time do you have in order to see all that happen before you can actually intervene? If you're too far back, or two, you wait for him to actually get close to somebody and then respond.
Then what's your
Too
then
late.
what's your backdrop, right? Like, what's behind him could be other people, it could be a building with people in it.
Yeah,
So you gotta be thinking about, your backdrop when because the bullets aren't gonna stop, not like in the movies or the TV shows. They continue through that person and travel until they hit something really hard, like maybe another person or a building or something.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, like, this reminded me of, like a scenario in the academy. And the scenario was, a guy with a knife and he's running, but at that point you know that like he's threatening people. And like, would you be okay to shoot him in the back in that scenario? If you thought he was an imminent threat to people around you and he had the ability to do it,
right.
could
Yeah.
you shoot him in his back when he's running away from you?
That's what really comes down to just whatever that officer's mindset is. And if you think that he's going to go ahead and basically cause serious bodily injury or death to somebody, if you wait and they get hacked, how you going to feel about yourself waiting for all that to happen? And then maybe the person is dying as a result of the attack.
Yeah.
So those are the tough calls, that police officers have to make. And some people think, oh, the officer shot him in the back and this and that. And I mean, this is an example of when, you could shoot somebody in the back and it could be totally justified, legally
Yep.
justified, because, you think he's going to attack somebody and kill him, and your job is to try to intervene and stop him in some way.
Yeah, yeah, you don't want it. I mean, we just have a natural aversion as human beings to doing that, right? Obviously, shooting someone, that's one, but shooting somebody in the back when they're running away from you is just like that's part of the training. Like you need to know when you can actually do something like that. And I think, you know, maybe we don't know the whole story here, but under the right set of circumstances, if he raised that hatchet and started moving towards somebody, obviously he would have lawful grounds to intervene with deadly force for sure. But yeah, I was thinking about that. But what about him dropping his gun, Omar?
Yeah.
Has that ever you ever seen anybody do that before? Lose their
I've
gun in
seen
a pursuit?
people forget their gun. I've seen people like go to booking and you realize after they went to booking, they got in a car and they drove out of booking and they realize when they're leaving the booking area that their gun is still in the lockbox back in the booking area because they have to remove their gun when they go into the jail facility. And
Mhm.
so that's, that you can't go out and do police work without your gun. So that was another interesting little twist here. He doesn't holster the weapon correctly because it ends up falling out and dropping down, I don't know, at least a couple stories. And then he still continues to go after the guy without his gun. So, I mean, if he comes into a lethal force situation, he's limited. What is he going to do? What's he going
He's
to
gonna
do?
use harsh language.
Yeah, he's going to yell at him. He's going to curse at him. I mean,
He basically turns into a British police officer at that point. He can throw his keys at him. Bobby, they don't carry guns, so
well,
I don't know what
somebody
you
who
do.
has got a gun over there in the UK or wherever it is to say, I need.
So, like, does he continue the pursuit or does he go get his gun in that scenario? Like, what would have been the right thing for him to do?
Well, he has. Okay, so if he continues, this is the way that's the way I look at it. I mean, he's continuing to chase after him, and then let's say he does have to confront him, and he doesn't have his gun. One, he's not only endangered himself, but he really has endangered everybody else around him if he can't intervene with lethal force, right? Because whatever his tools for lethal force at that point, he's got his baton, but he has to get close to use that to make it a deadly weapon. A
Mhm.
taser may or may not work, and it's not a deadly weapon, and it may not act in time to keep the guy from, attacking somebody. So it's basically you got to get your gun back. Now he could have if he has a second gun, that's a you know that's a
Backup?
consideration, yeah, that he's got a backup. But the other thing to really worry about, as far as he's concerned, is that if somebody picks up his gun and uses, that's
Right.
a big deal. So not only do you not have the tools to go and confront the guy, but now you got to worry about somebody picking up your gun and stealing it or using it against somebody. And
That would never happen in Long Beach. Nobody in Long Beach would pick up a gun on the ground and then just take it. Would they? Is
yeah,
that something they would do in Long Beach?
well, nowadays, there's got cameras everywhere, but still, it's one of those things that could happen. Somebody walk, and if
For
it's dark,
sure.
imagine if it was dark,
Yeah.
you came across the gun.
I feel like you would have I mean, either way, it's not an easy conversation to have as a trainee, but if you said, "Look, I was helping this guy from not dying from falling off this thing, and in the process, I had my gun in my hand, I tried to holster whatever, it fell, and I thought that the gun was an immediate problem, and I discontinued my foot pursuit to get the gun, put it out on the radio, the guy's, this direction." I mean, I think you can defend that decision process. I I don't know how you defend leaving your gun down there, chasing this guy without a gun, and then someone using that gun if that's what were to happen, and then kill somebody with your gun.
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain that? So,
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta go get your gun. You gotta retrieve it.
yeah,
You
I
gotta
think
secure it. It's gotta be with you. And then you just put out information that, this guy is still running in that direction and hopefully somebody can pick him up, on the other side. Turns out this guy ends up jumping over the ledge and breaking his leg because he didn't end up going anywhere. But, there's gonna be more than one person showing up for that kind of call.
yeah. Okay, and by the way, leaving your gun in the locker at lockup, yeah, that happens to a lot of people, and my training officer said, "Put your car keys with your gun, and there's no way you driving away without it." Good advice. If you're watching this podcast and you're a brand new officer, put your keys with your gun in the locker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it was get in the car, and the first thing I do when I sit down is check the holster to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
It was like,
Well, and then, like, like at the IRC in Santa Ana, they have lockers for your gun. Obviously, you can't bring that in. So you could do that, but a lot of people put their guns and everything in their and they lock it in their trunk of their vehicle. So
Mhm.
either way, if you drive away, at least all your stuff is with you, but yeah. you get into a rush, and something comes out on the radio, and it's like a code 3. You gotta get there fast. You might forget it. So it's happened.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So later, Diaz tries to get Harmon to open up, eventually touching on the rumor about her role in officers losing their jobs. Harmon, visibly irritated, demands to know the source, but Diaz remains vague. Before the conversation can continue, Harmon gets a call from her mother inquiring about her sister, a a fellow officer in Los Angeles PD. So I don't know, like they're obviously, I did like that Harmon said, "Hey, you know what? Shit happens. The guy jumped off the thing. It's not your fault." Of course, he doesn't say anything there about losing his gun, but yeah, but things get better. So I like that she was trying to kind of pick him up a little bit. I think she could tell he was upset, although I think he was thinking about what the other officer told him about Harmon. I think that's why he was kind of chewing his lip there. But
Yeah, would he have if he didn't know that stuff about Harmon, would he have told her about the gun that he ended up dropping it? And, if he felt like, I don't know, felt like he could trust her more. I mean, generally, when you're in that training environment and you're the new person being trained, I mean, you have to rely on your FTO. You can't be going around acting like you can't trust them, trust her
no,
or
that's a bad dynamic.
yeah, that's a problem, and they're hinting at it a little bit. I mean, I think some of the times that they're going back and forth and talking, it's a little bit like, you know, at least for us, there was a couple different phases of training. There was a phase 2 training and a phase 3. The phase 2 training is where you get evaluated every single day. And then the phase 3 training before you get off your probationary period, you get evaluated once a week. So they're sometimes they talk as if they're in that phase 3 part
Yeah.
where, they know each other a little better. There's, the person being trained and knows the job pretty well, not off probation yet, but not being evaluated every day. So sometimes our conversations are kind of a little bit further down the road, but I think he can't be worrying about whether he can trust her or not. He has to be able to trust her. She's
Yeah. Yeah, I got evaluated every day, starting day 1. That would've been nice. Only have a weekly evaluation. It was been a little stressful.
just
Like
for 1 year. Was it ours was 6 months. You get 6 months and it's every day. And then after that, it's once a week.
oh, no, no, yeah, no, it was every day for the 6 months while you're in training for those 4 phases, and then after that, you're done.
Oh,
There's no more evaluation. Although they kinda changed it kinda later where as soon as you got off training, they put you in the same beat as your training officer, and he would or she would follow you up and just kind of be a bit of a safety net, for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I forget what it was. And then you'd probably bounce to another shift or something. But yeah, so yeah, actually I went through patrol training twice. Once with Irvine Police Department right out of the academy, which, I didn't know anything, and I had to pass that or I was gonna not have a job. And then when I lateraled to Orange County Sheriff's Department, I was in the jails and training division for like 4.5 years, and then I went back out to patrol. And even though I'd passed patrol training once with another department, they're like, "Yeah, we wanna put you through patrol training," and I'm like, "Great."
rough.
So, like, nobody wants to do that twice, but the upside is that I already knew how to do the job. In fact, I think I had more patrol training time than my TO did. I mean, patrol time than my TO did, and it was actually kind of fun. Like, we were kinda like just a two-man car just rolling around and, like, stopping people. So yeah, they didn't have to, like, train me except, like, this is how we do it in the sheriff's
Right.
department as opposed to, but I mean, the job's the job. I mean, in terms of being a patrol officer, like, those things don't
Right.
change, but
I will
yeah.
say a comment is that one of the things, if you're somebody listening and you're thinking about getting into doing police work or law enforcement, thinking about the agency that you're going to go work for is a big deal, because some agencies, smaller agencies, you don't have all the opportunity that you would at a larger agency. You go to a larger agency like the Orange County Sheriff's or the Long Beach Police Department or Los Angeles Police Department. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in all different kinds of specialty areas that you're not going to get in a smaller department, with maybe only 100 or 150, police officers. So that's something to think about if you're looking, to
Yeah.
get work.
Yeah, I mean, I went from a kind of a smaller, medium-sized department. At the time, I only had like 160 or 70
Mhm.
sworn officers. Irvine's much bigger now. I think they probably have 2 or 3 times that many, maybe 3 times, to a department with, like, more than 2,000.
Uh-huh.
And, after kind of living, working in both worlds, I definitely like the larger department because you have within the sheriff's department, we have different cities that have their own character, lots of different jobs, and with a smaller department, yeah, there's few opportunities, but then when there is an opportunity, there's a lot of people competing for that one opportunity. So the slice of the pie is actually kind of thin. It gets thinner as you get higher in rank and opportunity. So yeah, I would if you have the choice, I would always cancel someone to probably go to a larger department over a smaller one. But you may not have that choice. Like if you're in a small city,
Right.
you got what you got. But yeah, how many sworn officers did Long Beach have or has?
They've been the range has been between 700 and 1,000. There was a term where you actually had 1,000, which was really, I mean, there was a lot of places you could work. They had PAL, the Police Athletic League, and all those areas that you would like to fill when you're pushing 1,000. They could put those officers in those jobs, and then over time it kind of settled in around 700. I don't know what it is. I think it's around 750 now, maybe.
Mhm.
Um,
So you guys are roughly the same size as Anaheim or bigger?
no, we're the fifth largest police department in the state.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds
so
like
there's to us, I mean, the sheriff's is bigger. Well, I'll say there's police department and then obviously a sheriff's department.
right.
Um, but when it comes to the police department, we're the fifth largest. LA's one, San Jose's big, um, San Diego's big. They're like I th-
Mhm.
like
San Diego's huge.
as against person and property crimes. A bigger agency, you've got burglary, you've got financial crimes or ID theft or forgery. You might even have an elder abuse area. You got computer crimes. So you might have all these other, specifics on a bigger department because you can do it. You've got the personnel and you've got the workload too.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, there's just so many benefits of working for a bigger department for sure. Okay, so moving on, the next scene, it brings them to a burglary, and the homeowners, a couple, report that the intruder had already fled away. The wife claims she arrived to find her husband tied up, and the burglar ran right past her. Outside, Diaz spots a man fleeing into a neighboring house. He hesitates momentarily before Harmon arrives, so he kind of runs up to the slider, doesn't go in, and together they enter and apprehend the suspect. However, the man reveals an unexpected twist. The husband had contacted him through an app, arranging a paid encounter, a sexual encounter where he's going to get tied up, which was then interrupted by the wife when they arrived home. So, was it? So for one thing, was this in Long Beach?
Yeah, that's the
Correct me if
kind of the East Division area, Naples area. It's where the waterways are at and the boats.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice down there. There's a lot of nice homes down there. There's the 2nd Street area, which is, they've got a lot of nightlife, restaurants, and they've redone the area over there at 2nd, Westminster, and PCH. That whole area they've developed. Back in the day, there used to be an old hotel there on that corner. And if anybody's ever watched the movie The Last Ship, there's a scene in there where they go to this hotel and it's green. That was the hotel that was there before, and they used it for part of that movie. That last ship was like a virus has taken over the world, and there's this Navy ship going around trying to help people
Yeah.
find the virus. There was a scene in there where that hotel is before they took it down and built a bunch of shops and restaurants on it. Yeah,
Yeah, it kinda reminded me of that place where, like, Simon and Simon, remember that old TV show?
yeah,
They have a similar thing down in San Diego, so it kinda reminded me of that. Anyway, so, yeah, so, I mean, I felt like Diaz, made the right choice, which is not entering that apartment by himself, waiting for his partner. I think that was a good call. I think he knew he coulda gone in, right? He just hesitated because he wasn't sure what Harmon was gonna say? Like, what do you think?
yeah. I don't know. There's a little bit of a mixed message. Like sometimes you can go in, sometimes you don't go in. I mean, generally, it's not a good idea to go in by yourself because, I mean, unless you're like in hot pursuit and you can see the person, right? They're in your view. But if somebody goes into a house and you lose sight of them, I mean, you're that whole house is now, open open to be checked and searched, and you can't do
Yeah.
that for yourself safe. You really need a second or third or fourth person,
No, yeah, it'd be crazy to go by yourself. I mean, he clearly had a legal right to go in there. He was in hot
Right.
pursuit, but yeah, I mean, like for burglary, I mean, yeah, there was an assault, I guess he thinks, right? But
Well,
again, if you run in there and this guy's just waiting to ambush you and kills you, like was it worth it? I don't think so. But of course, I mean, they wanna keep pushing this narrative for the story, which is he doesn't trust his TO. He's not sure whether he can trust her or not, and so he's second guess himself.
right.
But and she does say, I mean, she says you got to know the law to follow it, and that's actually really good advice. Like you have to be a student of the law. You need to know what you can do and when you can do it, if you can do it, where you can do it, laws of arrest and search and seizure and all that. So I mean, that's something that they just hammer in you in the academy.
Right.
So I mean that I thought that was appropriate, and it sounded like something a TO would say.
Yeah. You definitely have to know the law because all your actions are based on understanding what you can legally do and what you can't legally do. And if you're unclear on the law, that puts you in kind of a bind to act. You're like, what should I do? And you freeze up. And in a situation where maybe somebody might get hurt because you don't know what the answer is, that could be a problem. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Or pushing a situation that you have no right to push, right? You see these videos like these reels on Instagram where you have someone who, usually they're instigating it. They're like a sovereign citizen or something, but they basically, they're sitting there and a cop comes up because they got a call of a suspicious person in the car. And the cop says, "Hey, what are you doing here? Let me see your ID." And they're like, "I don't have to show you my ID." And they're like, "Yeah, you do." And they're like, "No, I don't." They're like, "I'm not, am I committing a crime?" And the cop's like, "Show me your ID." He's like, "I don't have to." So, like, the person in that car knows more about,
right.
search and seizure than that police officer does.
Yeah,
But if you're a police officer and you tell someone, "Let me see your ID," like 99% of the time, they're just gonna give it to you, right?
right.
And the one time that they don't, then you're like, "Well, wait a minute."
Well, and then they have to know what kind of contact they're at. Is it
Yeah.
is it a consensual encounter? Is it reasonable suspicion, or does it elevate to probable cause? And they just got to know where it fits, and can they articulate, which one it is, and then they can act on it. But if they can't, then they're going to get into this. Give me your ID. No, I don't have to give you my ID. And these people that are out there doing that whole, audit where they're trying to, see
Mhm.
if they can get you to do something when you don't have any legal justification to do it. I can see why they want police officers to know the law, but you know, just like anybody else, police officers are human and they don't know it. They don't know everything. And sometimes somebody who's been doing these First Amendment audits for 2 years, they're going to be highly skilled in that whole. They're probably going to know case law in some cases. What?
Yeah, I just don't think the average person, like, appreciates how difficult it is, because not only do you have to know, you know, like all the law, and it changes time to time. There's some new stuff happening, and these situations are sometimes a little complicated, and you're dealing with human beings and all that. I just don't think people really have a good sense of like how difficult this all is, and I think they just assume that police officers are going to be perfect in every situation, or they should just always know, or whatever, or just don't really appreciate how difficult it is. I think, and it is. It's super difficult, and you're in that moment, and you got to make a choice. And once you make that choice, it's you've done something. You put hands on somebody, you've restrained their ability to go, and now you're using force, and like there's no other situation where that's ever gonna happen in your life. You can come and go as you please, and when someone says you can't go, like when I was dealing with, I had trainees in the jail when I was a sergeant in the jail, and these guys are, from the jail, go out to patrol. In the jail, you tell an inmate what to do, they'll do it. They have to. They
Uh,
don't have a choice. But I tell them, like, when you talk to people on the outside, like when you're in patrol, they have choices. They have
mhm,
options.
mhm.
And you need to know, when you tell them to do something, do you have the legal right to make them do it? You can ask them,
But they
but
can
can
say
you
no.
make right? They'll say no. Like now what?
Well,
So it's tough. This job is tough, man. I don't miss that part. I the things that I miss aren't about that, right? The parts that I miss are the people I got to work with and some of the exciting stuff that we did and the fun stuff. But like that's a hard job.
yeah. I think that's the big change that I've seen recently, at least within the last 5 years, 6 years, is this really kind of challenge to the police authority. Like there is a group of people in society that are really making sure that the cops know their job. And so then it becomes, you know, not to say you can't go out as a police officer and educate yourself and get smarter, but the agencies are training all these officers. They have to look at it like, are we doing what we need to do? So when our officers go out in the field and they encounter somebody who's going to challenge their authority and they're not clear on the law, how are they going to be successful? How are they going to be able to do their job if we haven't done enough to, bring them up to the level that they need to be, because there are going to be people out there that are going to challenge them. And it wasn't that way 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, where you got that kind of resistance sometimes, or just, the challenge just to see if they knew what they were doing, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and it's getting recorded, so
Yeah.
just kind of ups the stakes. Okay, I think.
So they have the whole deal where it turns out that
Oh, right.
yeah.
Yeah, it turns out he's, I'm not kink shaming anybody. If that's your thing, that's cool. His wife, but he probably should have let his wife know about it. What do you? I mean, as far as I mean, I've seen some. I'm sure you too have seen some weird stuff. People, situations. You're just like, well, whatever. But what about the police work here? Do you like the fact that they were interviewing them both sitting next to each other on the couch?
Yeah, some of the procedure stuff was definitely not realistic because, if you're going to interview somebody, you don't want it biased by somebody else. And they're going to
Yeah,
listen to it and they're going to be repeating maybe what the other person said. This thing we've talked about it before. I think there was another scene in another episode. You got to interview people separately so that you can get whatever their version is or whatever their story is. You start kind of crossing the verbal stream, so to speak, and you're gonna get a muddied story, and it's just not helpful when you're trying to figure out something or
yeah,
sort through it. And
yeah, yeah.
when it comes to him, doing his thing, obviously, telling his wife was one thing, but people are living their lives. They're going to be doing whatever they're going to do, and that's what it comes down to when you're doing the job and you're doing police work. Is it legal? Is there a crime? Do I need to even be involved in any of this, or can I just get back in my car and drive away because this is people living their lives and there's no impact on anybody other than maybe their personal arrangement or whatever is going on between two people or three people or wherever the case may be. And
Yeah,
so that's when it comes back to knowing the law again, knowing the law and knowing when you're going to get involved and even using discretion sometimes. Sometimes there might be a deal where there's kind of a law kind of being broken, but you just don't enforce it because it's in line with the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law.
right. Yeah, for the interest of justice or whatever, you're just like, you know what? This is a person that doesn't need to get arrested today, and it's not because it's not for favor or fear, but you're just like, you know what? Here's a homeless person who, maybe they're violating something right now, but arresting this person and bringing them in, and maybe that's not the best thing for him. Maybe helping them, you know,
Yeah.
get a meal might be better. So yeah, if you just have to you gotta look at the totality of the circumstances, right? That's what they tell you in the academy: totality of the circumstances, and make a good choice. And I like that about our profession is that we're human beings, we're dealing human beings, and there's a place for empathy and compassion
Mhm.
and the answer to the handcuffs are not the answer to every problem, right? There's other and that's actually another thing that makes now that we're saying this, another thing makes law enforcement difficult because you're also kind of like a social worker, right? You're a counselor, you're talking to people in marriage situation, you're a social worker, like there's so many hats that you have to wear and it's complicated.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this story. It was a story of an officer. I think it was at a McDonald's, and he was buying a meal for this homeless person. And when he sat down with the homeless person and he was sitting at the table after he had bought him a meal, the gentleman goes on to tell him that, he was in the army and he was a Green
Mhm.
Beret and he was a shorter person. Wasn't very tall. He was like under 5 feet or about 5 feet. And so the officer was thinking like, this, he's just making it up and it's not true. And it turns out that this guy was one of the shortest Green Berets ever to have gone through the training and completed it. And he was. They went back and guess they'd researched it or something. Somebody had researched it and then found out that he was in the army. He was a Green Beret, but now he was homeless and he was living on the street. So you never know
Mhm.
who you're gonna come across to,
Yeah.
out there doing police work. You never know what their circumstance is gonna be that leads them to wherever they're at. And that just goes,
Everybody's got a story.
yeah, everyone's got a story, and that's why you can. That's kind of comes with the whole frame of mind of treating everybody, you know, like it's somebody to a certain degree, not know personally, but that you're going to get that back and forth of just that mutual respect. And I think a lot of times you get better results with that than you take another route. If you're
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, treating people, my training officer said you could treat everybody like $1,000,000, but you have a plan to kill them if it doesn't work out. So always offer the olive branch of peace, but have the arrows of war just right behind your back if you need them. Okay, so let's move on. So later, Harmon confronts Diaz about his hesitation, suggesting that the rumors about her influenced his judgment, which we think they did. Diaz insists that he was simply following protocol. Their conversation is cut short when Harmon receives a call from her former trainer, Detective Sergeant Koyama. He offers her a spot on his team and warns her that Eddie Watson, nicknamed Maniac, is rumored to be in Mexico. He cautions her against making reckless moves. So he drops the LA Haida detail, which stands for highway interdiction something.
is it highway or is it high
Is it highway?
density intervention train? Or was it?
No, I think it's highway. You know what? I should just know this because I go to the LA Haida training facility to teach a class like once or twice a year. No, it's like it's interdiction something. Oh, good grief! I'm sorry. If anybody's watching this and they know exactly what LA Hyde is, just
Yeah,
put it in a
maybe
comment.
send a message on it. What the
But
exact?
it's a drug interdiction task force that's multi-agency, and they're also the clearinghouse for warrants, for search warrants. So before you hit a house, you give them, where you're going and when you're going, and they check it to make sure that you're not doing a search warrant on a house that's also
Right.
the target of another investigation. So they also kind of the clearinghouse for that stuff. But so that's cool. Like you're when you're looking for someone to fill a special detail, you
Mhm.
tend to go to the people that you know and that you trust.
Yeah.
So
Well,
any thoughts about that, Omar?
yeah. So it looks like it says high intensity drug trafficking area. Does that sound familiar?
High intensity. It's not highway, high intense. Okay,
High intensity drug trafficking area.
there you go.
And LA is Los Angeles.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there's a Haida. I mean, they have Haidas all over the United States, or
Yeah.
at least
They probably do have
California.
for traffic, that does interdiction on interstates. I mean, I know they have
Yeah.
more of those where they focus just on drug interdiction on the main interstates and some of the highways.
Yeah, they have different ones in different counties, but yeah, I've only been to the one in LA. We don't have one in Orange County. Maybe in San Diego, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've been to some training there a while back. They have all kinds of training programs they put on, various things back. So
All right.
when it comes to finding people, that's usually what happens. Usually somebody's inside the detail and they have somebody that they really like, and they'll even suggest, hey, maybe you should put in for this. This is something that you can, that you'd be really good at, or we think you'd be a good fit. Because there's all kinds of factors that go into selecting somebody for a specialized detail. And so you gotta, they want to make sure they get the right person for the job. And obviously people that know somebody that's already in the detail is a plus.
Yeah. Okay, well let's move on to the next scene. Determined to verify this lead, Harmon drives them to a pub instructing Diaz to stay in the car. Inside, she meets Smokey, a gang-affiliated contact. She presses him about Maniac and brings up the death of Delgado. So she clearly has, background with this person. Seems like it goes back quite a ways, so not quite sure what that is just yet in the season. Smokey hints that Maniac's involvement in the killing was not well received and that the issue has been quote unquote handled. Harmon assumes he means Cortez's death. However, Maniac is the son of a powerful figure in San Quentin prison, making him practically untouchable. Smokey warns her to back off or something may happen to her. When Harmon returns to the car, she overhears Diaz talking to his girlfriend. She then informs him that Smokey's warning confirms Maniac is still in the country. So, yeah, any thoughts on this scene?
Well, it was kind of an interesting scene in the sense that she's kind of she's going and collecting information from what he could be considered like an informant, basically confidential
Mhm.
informant. But she's doing it in a marked police vehicle with her uniform on. I mean, there's no secret that she's going over there to talk to somebody inside that building. Probably everybody in the neighborhood knows who this person is. So, I mean, if you were looking to get some information, would that be the way that you'd go about doing it? Where you would, go into a business in full uniform. It doesn't seem like they'd be real receptive, especially if, you know, they've been involved in criminal activity before, or they currently are involved in criminal activity, but they want that kind of, you know, presence at their business. Say, hey, you place her out front. And then all the people that work for the guy were were in there watching the whole thing until he told them to leave. I don't know. It was kind of strange.
Yeah, no, it would never happen like this. Like basically, I don't know who this guy is, but if you are in a Hispanic gang and you're talking to the police about anything, even the time of day,
Ugh.
and someone sees you do that, you're gonna get taxed. Like something's gonna happen to you. You're gonna get hurt. Like it's not allowed at all in any context.
Yeah.
Like you would have to have that conversation in a way where no one could see it. It was like she put this guy on blast. There's
Yeah.
no way you're driving up in your patrol car in uniform in this guy's bar
Yeah.
unless he's just such an OG that or everybody knows that he has a like she grew like like he helped raise her. Like there's
Right.
some backstory where everybody knows, okay, this is a person that is like part of his family or just some weird situation where this might be okay. But even then, if you're in a Hispanic gang and you're talking to the police about anything,
Yeah.
it's not allowed. So he would have to face some kind of consequences for this. So that's not realistic, but that's basically how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Okay, so their next what's that?
I said it was a strange. I mean, it made for some, you know, tension
Right.
inside the bar, but it was not. That's
Yeah, I mean, I get why they did it. It pushes the plot. It solves the one, it brings a new character in who's kind of this interesting guy who has a relationship with her. We don't know what that relationship is yet. And then it answers the question like, is Maniac still in the United States? He
Mhm,
is,
mhm.
based on what he told her, not intentionally. But yeah, so I mean, obviously we're gonna see more of him, but the Smokey character, but yeah, it would never happen like that.
Yep.
Their next call is about a car fire. The complainant claims a homeless woman is responsible and voices frustration over rising issues caused by the homeless. Officer Lasman is also on the scene and pulls Harmon aside. He informs her that a shop owner is suing the police over their failure to protect his business during the mob violence in episode 2, that the street takeover. He blames Harmon for keeping Diaz on a tight leash, implying that she prioritizes caution over civilian safety. While searching a nearby homeless encampment, tensions escalate and a struggle breaks out. And in the chaos, well, not just a struggle, but basically, um, Diaz and his buddy Holt are, walking through there in the dark by themselves.
Mhm.
They kind of get set upon by some homeless dude, and gets a syringe stuck in the side of his neck. Panicked, Diaz administers so he goes down. So he starts foaming at the mouth, he goes down. Diaz administers Narcan before backup can arrive. Overwhelmed by the incident, he spirals into distress, but Harmon steps in, helping him regain his composure as the episode concludes. Yeah, that's a lot for the new guy. Okay, so yeah, interesting. So what did you think about? Well, one, she's talking to Lasman, Sergeant Lasman, who kind of is telling her that that it's her fault or something about. I mean, he was on scene, right? He's on scene when they're in that takeover. Do you think it's appropriate for him to be kind of blaming her about anything when he is, the ranking, you know, person at that scene?
Yeah, I think what we're getting out of him showing up here and there, probably more than a field sergeant would show up, on that kind of, I mean, he's been showing up on all these calls, and then he's commenting on how she's doing her job, especially the field training job, where he's not around all the time. He doesn't know what their interactions are. It's between him and it's between Harmon and Diaz, and they're alone a lot of the time. So he doesn't really know what's going on. He has maybe a little bit of a periphery to already kind of have an opinion and a judgment on it. Seems a little bit, but so that I think they're hinting at that he's got some kind of axe to grind with her. They're dropping these little breadcrumbs of him, not liking her for some reason or not trusting her, and we don't really know what the story is. And I think that's, they're going to end up giving us some more info later about why he doesn't really like her or why he doesn't really trust her. And that's why he's always
Yeah.
questioning her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I mean, it is setting up that tension, right? Not everything can go. A story is really boring if everything just goes perfectly, right? There has to be some tension, so that's good.
So
And then yeah, so Diaz and Holt when they're out there, Diaz does a good job of intervening because it looked like Holt was maybe using excessive force, maybe striking this person when the attack was over. So he did a nice job of intervening. That's not easy to do, right? Especially if you're a new person, you
oh,
get caught up in the situation or you don't know that you need to do that. You're really saving your partner who's maybe emotional and kind of letting the situation kind of overcome them.
mhm.
So that was good. I like that. But any other thoughts about that situation, especially
Yeah.
Holt ending up with the syringe,
Yeah.
hanging out of his neck?
Anytime you're training, you're a field training officer and you've got somebody who you're responsible for, and we've talked about this in a couple, previous episode, you're responsible for them. So anytime you send them off by themselves to go do something, you've got to have a high level of confidence that whatever job you gave them to do, whatever mission you gave them, that it's going to be in their abilities at that time. I mean, they might not be far enough along where you would send them off and have them go do something because they just don't have enough field training to do it. And,
Mhm.
they send them off to go check these tents in the park. And I mean, was there a discussion on how you're going to do it? What's your plan? How you're going to go about checking these places if they don't, oh, no, what are you going to do with the person in the tent doesn't open up the tent? What's your plan? What are you going to do?
Well, and they put him with like a guy who I think is a very new officer. Maybe he's just off of training. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's unclear. I think he seems like he's off training because he was on that one with he was on the beginning of the episode with the hatchet, I think, and
No, no,
that's
he's definitely off training, but like maybe this is like he's just on for like obviously a new officer. He's not.
right.
Maybe he's just off of training. I'm not sure, but it's not like if I when I was a training officer and I had my trainee go with somebody, it was like another senior officer, another training officer, and
Right.
basically I'm kind of handing them off, saying, "Hey, can you take my guy with you?" And like it's not just you teaming them up with somebody who's got like 10 more minutes of experience than them in a
Right.
situation that's pretty fluid and at night. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot could happen.
Yeah. And that was kind of a standard for one Long Beach for training is that you always tried to put somebody with another training officer. I mean, it doesn't always work out that way, but generally speaking, if they're in training, you're trying to put them with someone who's a field training officer who's gone through the field training program, who knows what the expectations are when they're training somebody. And so they're getting that consistent level of training from a different person instead of just putting them with somebody who's like Holt, who may be brand new. He's off training, but he's brand new, but he's doesn't really know. He's still learning the job. Really, he can go work by himself, but he's not he's not a 5 year or 10 year person.
No, it takes several years. I felt like after like year 3 or something like that, I felt like, okay, I'm getting this. You know what I mean? Like when your first couple years, you're still figuring it out, you're still learning new stuff. And it's not until you're like, yeah, the year 3, year 4 plus where you're like, okay, this is all making sense to me. And you have that, you have that foundational knowledge to really
Right.
be, a really accomplished or comp. I mean, when they take you off training, you're supposed to be a quote unquote competent solo patrol officer, but really that doesn't happen for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So one other thing too, I just feel like, I mean, homelessness is such a big deal here in Southern California. It's a real problem. I mean, I don't pretend to know what the answer is to it exactly. I know some people who are working in this area and have some interesting and I think really cool some solutions to it. And on a small scale, I see it working in some communities, but we have so many homeless people. You look at some states or some cities where they have a much smaller city and they're able to manage their homeless people, but you have, tens of thousands in, Los Angeles or in Long Beach. It's just a different problem. So, but it's good that they're talking about it in the show. It's very topical and timely and accurate in terms of it being an issue. However, I do feel like they're kind of making the homeless people look very dangerous. Like they're stabbing people and setting stuff on fire and fighting in the park and stuff, which of course those things could happen. And this is a 30-minute show, so they're trying to
Yeah, put it all in
pack
there.
it but I do feel like if you didn't know better, you're watching the show, you're thinking, every homeless person's walking around with a hatchet or with a loaded hypodermic needle ready to stab you with it.
Right, right. Or they've got some kind of mental illness and
Yeah.
not
Well, I mean, there's a lot of mental illness for sure, but it doesn't mean that they're dangerous, right? I just if you're watching this, if you're like living in a place where you don't have a lot of homeless people and you think every homeless person has got a hatchet or gonna stab you with a syringe, it's just not true. But I mean, I would say any person walking up to you that you don't know, you should be using caution, like obviously. But yeah, I just feel like it's coming on a little thick with the homeless people being violent.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you're interacting with somebody and now, the words have even changed. I think that it's called unhoused versus homeless. I don't know. There's the new
Oh,
terminology.
my I may get canceled.
You can say that right. There's an unhoused now. I mean, I don't, there's different terminology for it. But yeah, I mean, I've had some, you know, great conversations. I mean, sometimes the call's done and you're just chatting with someone and they happen to be homeless, but that doesn't mean, they're not a person and you can have a
Totally.
conversation with them. And yeah, you know, it's one of those things where, yeah, not everyone is going to jump at you. Not everyone is a threat. You still got to pay attention to those things because you got to look out for your own safety. But a lot of times, they're just people running through a hard time. Maybe they do have some mental illness, and it's a challenging problem for sure in LA County. And I think if somebody found the answer to it, they would have turned it into something where they could make money. Probably, I don't know, but
Well, yeah, I mean, didn't the governor give somebody hundreds of thousands of like 700 like three quarters of $1 billion to build homes, and I think they've built like 2? I'm not sure. So, yeah, there's people trying to figure this out, and like I said, I don't know what the answer is, and
yeah,
I mean, I hope it's answerable. These people need help, especially when you get the veterans like you're talking about, that
mhm,
story about the Green Beret, that just breaks my heart that people, that served our country got, essentially maybe it broke their mental health
right.
and they find themselves homeless. That's just heartbreaking. So anyway, I think does that bring us to the end of the show? Was there anything more? Was that it? I feel like that was the last
No,
scene.
I think that was the last one where they're looking through the camp, and then he ends up doing the Narcan and
Right.
saving him. which is, you know, a
Saves
whole
them.
other thing now too. Narcan back in the day didn't exist, and it definitely wasn't carried in a patrol car on an officer's belt. Nowadays, you know, you may even find it on an officer's belt or somewhere on their person
Oh,
so that you can administer it immediately.
I think in Southern California, I think every officer carries Narcan now. I think almost uniformly. And if anybody's interested, you can go to Walgreens or whatever, and you can buy it over the counter. So you can have it. And in fact, I recommend people, especially you have children, you have teens, like you should have Narcan in your home, just part of your first aid kit. And God forbid your kid was given a pill that turned out to be counterfeit that contained fentanyl, which is,
Mhm.
synthetic opiate 50 times more powerful than heroin.
That's
And you just don't wanna be in a situation where you could have administered it and you just didn't have it available. So, yeah, I think everybody should have it, honestly. If I had if you have a teenager, you give them some and put them in their backpack or the glove compartment of their car or whatever. I don't see any downside to that, but alright. Well, I think that kinda wraps it up, and this has already been kinda a pretty long podcast. So, thank you everybody for watching. And we'll be back with episode 4 next week. And if you like these podcasts, please press that subscription button there.
ask
Like
questions.
it.
Those some questions
Yeah, put some
on my box.
questions in the comments are more than welcome. We'd love to answer those. And we wish everybody be safe out there and keep your head on a swivel.
All right.
All right, Omar. See you next week.
Right quick.
All right.
Thank
Take care.